Welcome to the Law Eagles Vodcast. Thank you for being here today. Today I have Brian Jenkins on. He is the principal and broker at Commercial Asset Advisors. He is doing the second part of a two-part series on the commercial real estate market. He's already given us the argument for the bull market, and today he's coming on to give the argument for the bear market. So, Brian, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell me a little bit about, what you're thinking, what you want to go over today, what you want to cover.
Yeah, so I think last time was fun. I appreciate it again having me on. We talked a lot about sort of the four main product types and sort of the silver lining that you could see looking at the market right now. Obviously, nobody's got a crystal ball, so we don't know which way this is going to take. And real estate is a fairly slow asset class. We have escrows are 60 to 90 days, so we haven't really seen how this is going to go. It's still very much early in the game. And so I thought we'd just talk about investments generally, and then we'll go product type by product type about some of the headwinds or clouds on the horizon, as we might say, that are kind of affecting each of these areas.
The bears. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we jump into it, happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Was it good? You were saying you finally got a full night of sleep?
Yeah, it was incredible. That was the best gift I could have had.
Congratulations. Yeah, happy Father's Day.
Thanks.
So investments. Why don't we do sectors and kind of go one by one? You want to kick it off with like office space?
Yeah, let's talk about just investments generally here for a second. There's one legislative headwind that is sort of specific to California, but that we should talk about. And obviously just for those listening in the future, June 22nd. So to kind of put this all in future historical context, Prop 13 has been sort of a staple of property tax protection in California. And there's an initiative on the ballot this year that would remove that protection from commercial properties, specifically over, those over a threshold, which is still being modified last I heard, but it'll be somewhere between 3 and 5 million, it seems like. And that headwind would essentially have people who have owned properties for sometimes decades have their property taxes stepped up to today's valuation, which would be a huge increase for a lot of folks. And so on top of everything we're going to talk about in all these product types, if those landlords who may have been holding on to these properties because of the extra cash flow they've had from not paying those higher property taxes, decide, it's not worth it anymore, and start dumping those properties on the market, we could see a real influx of supply without, in a post-COVID environment, particularly the demand to soak that back up.
Wow.
So
that's
that
going
could
to significantly change cap rates, right? On properties?
Yeah, very, very, very well could. So we could see a real supply and demand imbalance, and real estate, like all markets, is susceptible to that. And right now with COVID in general, transaction volume is dropped significantly. Lending standards are changing. Everybody's trying to get their footing right here. So if this happens at the same time, it could be a really dramatic impact on the market, and that's on the ballot here in November.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty nuts. For the commercial real estate space, I've seen, residential. I still know a lot of people that work in that industry, and I see them posting on Facebook and stuff. Sounds like the buyer market is still up there. Like we still got like a good buyer market out there for residential, and it's probably going to hold or prop up the residential market for, hopefully won't even see a blip on this one. Who knows? But in regards to commercial, are we still having buyers? Are there still buyers out there that are interested, or are we still having that?
Some, yeah. We're still seeing some 1031 exchange buyers that started pre-COVID that are still being sort of pushed through that system, and that's a high level of motivation because the property tax, the income tax implications of that can be so big. But whereas homes, there's a piece of that's almost discretionary spending, right? People could buy a cheaper home, but they want that nicer home.
Right.
And so they're willing to pay for it. Most commercial transactions are not discretionary in that way. They're investment purchases. And so they're going to track the market and be a lot more quick to react to situations like this than a home, which is a lot more emotional decision. For all of us that have bought homes, you know how hard and stressful that process can be, because it's like you're going to be raising your family there, or retiring there, or whatever stage in your life you're at, or starting something there. That's not the same as an investment. And those two, a lot of people conflate the two industries as being being comparative in some way, but they really don't rhyme at all. They're very different.
I'm wondering what's going to happen on the residential side with all the mom and pop owners that have residential rental properties, because as soon as all these eviction rules go away and they can start getting their properties back, I imagine there's going to be a couple extra residential properties on the market.
There very well could be. Maybe we'll start there on the multifamily side, because those renters that you're talking about that's kind of the same thing here.
Do it.
If this leads into a broader recession, if unemployment numbers stay high, obviously right now they're in orbit, some of the highest on record, and if that continues, you're talking a renter pool that shrinks, that deteriorates in quality, tenant defaults increase, in a market that right now, multifamily cap rates have been as low as they've ever been, with vacancy times as low as they've ever been. A lot of landlords don't have that elasticity built into their investment to absorb those long vacancy times, or really reaching for tenants that aren't, that they wouldn't have even called back before.
Right.
So multifamily could face a big piece of that. The other legislative risk, particular to multifamily, is rent control. So starting in January this year, rent control became a real thing statewide in California. It's tied at inflation plus 5%. So, right now, that for San Diego, that hovers around 7.5% is capped in terms of your rent increases. So there could be, landlords too that might be able to weather that storm if they could bring all their tenants up to market. Some of their tenants might go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is that 7%? Is that, if you were not increasing your rents for 5 or 6 years, and then all of a sudden January pops up, is that 7%? Does it matter if you hadn't been increasing your rents?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So you can only do that 7.5% once in any 12-month period. And so, I'm seeing it all the time. We're seeing tons of properties on the market now where new buyers are looking at them going, I can appreciate the fact that tenant is 30 or 40% under market. But if that tenant doesn't decide to leave voluntarily, we're capped at a 7.5% increase. Wow. And it'll take us 5 years, or 3 years or 5 years or whatever to get back up to market on that particular unit. And there is some caveats, and that's a very complicated rule. If any of your viewers have questions on it, we should have a bigger conversation about it, because there's a lot of nuance to that rule. But rent control is a major headwind in the multifamily game. 7.5% for those that have been maintaining their properties and keeping their rents up might not be such a bad thing. Where I'm very concerned is that Sacramento starts to look at that rent control bill as another way to provide stimulus to the economy by dialing that back even further. If they think that rents are continuing to go up too fast, or that housing continues to be unaffordable, that this becomes a slippery slope to even tighter rent control. Because in our view, 7.5% still ties a lot of landlords' hands to do what they wanted to do. There's other implications that this kind of gets worse.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's save that. That sounds like it could be a whole nother episode for that one.
Yeah. Rent control is a big topic.
Yeah. Okay. Crazy. Yeah. Continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just was curious about that.
So I think that kind of ties up, multifamily. If we start seeing millennials moving back in with their parents, or people moving into suburban neighborhoods, or downsizing, I think there could be a lot of headwinds in the multifamily space.
Gotcha.
I think overall the theme that we're going to talk about in every product type today is just that the damage to the economy from COVID was very severe. This will be long and deep. This economy was already in its late stages, and that we're overdue in valuations in a lot of ways.
People were already looking for a pullback, right? That's what I've been hearing for a couple of years.
Yeah. There's people that have been telling that to me since 2015, and they weren't wrong. It's just it continued, and that I guess the other piece of it is just the stimulus that was provided is just nowhere near enough to repair the damage of this kind of thing, and that goes without talking about a second wave, which we've started to see happen in China. We've seen rising cases, particularly this week. A lot of news stories about that in Florida, Arizona, Texas, Utah, even LA and San Diego are seeing some more resurgence in cases. So that adds pressure to all the stuff we're talking about today.
Got it. All right. Wow. Well, let's jump into the one that I think is on a lot of people's minds. I think this one in retail in relationship to restaurants, I think that's another big one, but I think this one is too office space. What do
Yeah.
you think about office space? I mean, with the whole work
I
from
mean,
home and remote,
I, I,
everything.
I mean, the fact you could just say the whole work from home, like, implies that it's a thing, and that is now a thing, right?
All
I mean,
right.
that's real, and that's a trend that may be here to stay. I mean, we can talk about this for all these things. These could be changing behaviors in a very permanent way, or certainly semi-permanent. And work from home is one of those. You know, we're doing this thing over Zoom that might not have been done before that, and we're seeing that with a lot of things. And so this work from home definitely means people can downsize. Definitely means people can work from home completely.
Yeah.
You know, for smaller companies, and distribute their workforce. And you know, there's other options. So before, working from home was sort of a not a weird thing, but it was definitely less common. There was some prestige and some status in having an office, and that credibility that brought a company was important to a lot of folks. And today, that need for that credibility is completely gone away.
Wow.
So people are doing work from home is here to stay, and the technology is here to support it, and that's going to continue to grow. And people have adopted it quicker than they ever would have on their own, you know, in that amount of time frame. I mean, I think we talked about it in the last episode that, you know, we've probably done 5 years or more of, you know, adoption of technologies in
Right.
90 days, you know?
Yeah.
So there's just no way that everything completely returns to normal in that front. And again, cap rates are a reflection of risk. And if investors coming in to buy properties reflect office and see office as a higher risk asset class, the cap rates are going to have to rise to meet that expectation.
That makes sense.
It's back to this supply and demand sort of thing.
Yeah.
And if you see vacancies coupled on top of that, it could be a very different environment for office.
Got it. That makes sense. I went to my office today. It was one of the first days that I've been in there for a whole day. And I expected to see people back in the office again. And I went in, parked. And there was like 5 spots that had been taken. So we had like 20, 25 spots open. Went up to my office, and it was a ghost town. There was nobody in the whole entire building. It was pretty weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked about the cap rates going up. We've talked about, you know, vacancies going up. The other piece of it for office is that landlords are going to have to, you know, some of their costs are going up in terms of janitorial, in terms of systems to put into their offices to make tenants feel more comfortable in coming back to work. If those costs are going up at the same time as their income's going down, at the same time as their value's going down because of cap rates, it becomes kind of sort of a compounding problem.
Definitely.
That could accelerate. And again, not immune from the property tax rules changing.
Oh, really? Wow. That's nuts. The other interesting thing, and I've been seeing this go around, it's something I've been dealing with for a select few clients that I've been helping out with some of these things, but they have force majeure clauses in their lease agreements, but most of the force majeure clauses are one way. So if the landlord isn't able to provide habitable space or, you know, quiet use and enjoyment of the space, then basically it doesn't mean they're in breach. They still are entitled to their rents. But there's no similar rule for the tenant, but the tenant can still invoke the protections under the California law. It's the Civil Code Section 1511, and it's, you know, it's basically those types of defenses that you can use whenever you have an issue as a tenant. So it's that's going to be another headwind as well.
Yeah. Well, in some cases, they should be talking to you for some business interruption insurance coverage. Hopefully, they can some of that to help everybody win there. But it's a headwind for.
Yeah, that's how they end up talking to me about the you know, about their lease agreements, because I end up talking about the business interruption and then gets into the leases, and it's I don't. It's going to be interesting to see how people get through this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, talking about increased costs and operating costs, I think retail is certainly going to see some of that too.
Definitely, so, restaurants and retail. Let's do it.
Yeah. So consumer activity aside, you know, restaurants are definitely going to have to space people out a lot more. You know, be cleaning things. I mean, their cost of providing service to their customers are going up. I mean, even just simple things like masks when you're buying a new one for all your employees every single day. multiple shifts per day, that becomes a line item on your P&L that wasn't there before. And all this leads to, lower rent collections, lower leasing activity, and everything else, coupled with the fact that of all the product types out there, financing is probably the least available for retail. It's the product type that lenders are the most scared of. And so when you have a lack of financing, a lack of liquidity in the market, it drives higher cap rates. It drives, that supply and demand imbalance that we were talking about earlier. And legislatively, this bill died, so I don't want to spend a whole ton of time doing it, but I think it sort of plays into a theme I think you're seeing in California. There was State Bill 939, which was giving restaurants, or attempted to give restaurants, some really incredible posture against their landlords to give them. Basically, the bill indicated you could give your landlord 30 days notice to cut you a better deal, or you could terminate your lease with no penalties or very little penalties.
I heard about that one. Yep.
And that bill died, but I think it's symbolic of the legislative environment that a lot of landlords are operating in California, and that there is, rent control on the multifamily side, the property tax stuff we've talked about at length already, that there are legislative headwinds that are being stacked on top of these COVID, related recessionary trends that coupled together can be really impactful.
Gotcha.
So retail, the SB 939 is dead as of right now, but that doesn't mean there's not some support for it coming back in some form or fashion, for which, restaurants and retail would be those tenants would be the biggest benefactors, and those landlords the biggest, they get the short end of the stick there.
Yeah, for sure. And so retooling or redoing the improvements in a restaurant. Mm-hmm. So let's say you would say that's not the highest and best use anymore for a property, and you don't want to have a restaurant be there anymore. What's the practicability of changing a restaurant into something else? I mean, what would you change it into? A warehouse? I mean, you're not changing it into office space. You're not changing it into
or salons.
You're right. You're not changing it into a salon.
Even they're impacted. So, I mean, in San Diego, most of our retail is service. Those are places where people have to come. These aren't places that can just all flip a switch and go online. I mean, there's some of that, like we talked about in the last episode, but I mean, they're talking about massive changes to that industry. Wow. From a regulatory standpoint, gyms especially, we talked about that in some cases. There's been some talks about martial arts places still have to have people spaced out, and that's that's kind of the point of martial arts. So it's like there's whole industries that are going to have to really grapple with what do we change, how do we and some of them may not survive this whole thing. And this kind of goes back to this amount of stimulus isn't enough. That this black swan event was too big to be countered by the stimulus that was provided, and that a lot of these businesses, particularly in San Diego, I mean, movie theaters, that's another one. Like, how does that survive in a post-COVID world? These become increasingly hard problems to solve, and they're not that they're unsolvable, but they have to be solved in a finite amount of time to where a landlord can work with them, and it works for the landlord before the stuff starts going back to the bank, before people start getting evicted. There's a timeline to solve these problems, and if they don't have the capital to do it, they may just throw in the towel. And that's the real problem that retail is facing. And every single business has a unique challenge with that. And landlords are going to have to look at that and see which ones are going to survive and which ones aren't.
And just retooling the space into something else. Like, I just don't see what you retool it to. I just don't see what you.
And it's expensive. It's expensive. I mean, all contractors, price of construction are really high. Even if it's just demo, that's still very expensive. From a regulatory standpoint too, there's been headwinds on that. I mean, California building code over the last few years, we've seen Title 24 rules really increase the cost of electrical. The health department has changed, how restaurants need to lay out their kitchens and stuff like that. There's massive costs that continue to go up on the construction side, not just because of supply and demand on, construction and the cost of those materials and everything else, but because of in California, the ways that they changed the California building code of what's required to be built.
Yeah.
And office has got that office has probably had the worst shake of it. Title 24 in particular. ADA compliance is another one. It's a big one. It's very expensive to do.
Yep.
So Retail's got some headwinds. Probably the biggest of which, though, is the lending, like we talked about. Not being able to get financing.
Gotcha.
Or having a hard time doing it, or low LTVs, some combination of that.
Okay. It seems like it seems to me like this, if this goes down this path the way it's going, at the end of the day, the businesses that are operating inside of these lease spaces, they're going to do what they have to do. They're either going to go bankrupt or they're going to move out and go to another space, get a lower rent. It seems to me like this is going to be on the backs of finance, the people that are financing these deals, the lenders, and on these owners.
And landlords. Yeah, 24 Hour Fitness announced their bankruptcy last week. A lot of us knew that was coming. That a lot of people, I think, were shocked about that, because your first thought about somebody like 24 Hour Fitness is, well, people are still paying their gym memberships. Maybe it stops for a little while, but they're that people are on membership plans. They've got sort of hooks for being able to get out. You got to pay your initiation fees and stuff like that. But yeah, they did their BK. They're shutting down locations.
Wow.
I'm going to have to restructure.
We had a 24-hour membership, 24-hour fitness membership, and we were paying $40 for me and my wife total for the whole year, because we had gotten on one of those plans where it was like $1,200 up front and basically paid for 3 years. And then every year after that was $40. So that was back in 2001. So I think if you spread it all out, I think we did pretty good on that deal. Wasn't too bad. How do you survive like that anyways, though? That's the other question. Like, that's when you're talking about margins already low, like, that's a perfect example. Like, how is 24-hour fitness making money on some of these deals they got with customers?
Well, like I've said already, it's just too early to tell. The stimulus won't be enough. That this damage was really deep, and that that's the bear case for this whole thing, is that we haven't begun to see the bankruptcies, because it's too quick. We've already only been in this thing 120 days at this point. It's still really early in the cycle for people to figure out what is going to happen next, and that economic damage, we won't know the end result of it for a couple quarters to come.
Yeah, and the scary part's going to be when the people that are on unemployment, when this the $600 stimulus per week goes away. Yeah. And I don't think that's going to be the end, because that ends at the end of July. But what I think is going to happen is, I think you're going to have the people that are getting those checks, and it's going to be in about another week or two. They're going to look at that and they're going to say, wow, we're going to be missing $2,400 of income come September. So I think them buying stuff is going to end right now. It's like we're in the process of it ending right now. So people going out to do stuff and spend money out of that, that's all going to be stocked away in the bank.
Well, that's why I think, there was a lot of excitement last week about retail sales going up, I think, by 17% May over May. And it's like, well, that was great, but there was nothing bought in April. So,
right.
Like what are we looking at?
Unless we're just going to have a continuous stimulus from the government for income.
That's where you hear the really scary bear case is are we walking into stagflation? Are we walking into Japan's lost decade? Or the really, really negative one is, failed economies like Venezuela, or, the troubles that Spain and Greece had coming out of the recession. If you look in the last recession, Lehman collapsed in October of 2008, but at least for commercial real estate, the true bottom wasn't until, depending on what stat and what product you're looking at, certainly late 2009, but in my view, really not till first or second quarter of 2010. So that's the sort of lag and the timeline we're talking about. And, I was talking about it today in late June, 120 days into this, we're way on the front side. We're in the first or second inning of this,
Gotcha.
How this is going to affect real estate. It's still very early to tell.
Yeah, it's going to be, I don't see, the other headwinds to it are, even if they do bring back workers to workforces, the workers they're bringing back, and that's, we got a lot of workforces that are being propped up by government stimulus. Like, they're getting their corporate debts are being purchased by the Federal Reserve, and they're being kept in play because they're getting money from essentially the Federal Reserve, which is the government paying them money to stay in business. They're paying their employees, but they're furloughing tons. I talked to a stewardess, and she basically said, hey, come September, October, we're going to find out how many of the 80% of workers that were furloughed aren't coming back to work. And she said, because that's when the money runs out. And I was like, And
Well,
she's thinking
and
it's going to be the majority of them, you know?
And the technology is compounding that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those office tenants we were talking about, they can make do with less employees if they can automate things. So, I mean, again, we've crammed years and years of technological advancement into 90 days, and that will reverberate through the economy in all these product types. If there's less renters, multifamilies hurt. If there's people making less money, retail's hurt. If retail's hurt, industrial's hurt. So
it's all web of business,
it's all tied
right?
together. Yep. Which it kind of takes us to industrial.
Yeah,
I think it's really sort of maybe the next product type here.
Yeah.
You know, industrial, I think has gotten the most press for being the resilient to this, but there's still some headwinds. Industrial is one of the things that often trades the least often. So probably is one of the ones that benefits the most from having the Prop 13 protection that it benefits from right now. And if that goes away here in November, which it's polling really well from what I'm seeing and looks to have a fairly good chance of passing, that could have a really big impact on industrial. Because a lot of those leases are gross. They don't allow for pass-throughs. You know, office and retail, many of those leases allow for property taxes to be passed through the tenants. Industrial probably has the least amount of that. You know, a lot of those are gross.
Gotcha.
And don't allow that pass-through. So industrial landlords have sort of the biggest brunt of that, especially because a lot of them have long-term leases. You know, in apartments, you're capped at 7.5%. So even if those property taxes go up, you might not be able to push up your rents to cover it. Industrial, you can't push up your rents, not because of, you know, any caps or anything, but because you might have a 10-year lease with a tenant, and so your rent's set. So
definitely.
So some of those landlords could have some real challenges dealing with that. A prolonged downturn here affecting manufacturing and distribution could definitely impact, you know, some of the absorption and people downsizing in industrial and stuff as well. So
what do you think about the Amazon effect over what we've been dealing with during this pandemic? We had all sorts of baby boomers that couldn't figure out for the life of them how to get on a phone and, you know, order stuff on Amazon. And now all of them are like Amazon experts, and they're ordering like food and groceries and, you know, everything. What do you think that's going to do to Targets and Walmarts and Costco's?
Yeah, I mean, that could definitely, you know, if they adapt and have better online offerings. I think Target's done a great job at that. Costco's done a great job. Amazon's obviously that's where they were born and bred, but that could really be strong. I mean, Amazon and Walmart have been big absorbers of industrial space just to handle the distribution required for, you know, getting your prime delivery in 2 days that they want to push to 1 day, that they want to push to same day. But Amazon also is not sitting on their heels and taking all this industrial space and just trying to figure it out. They're trying to get very efficient with space as well. So I'm seeing some vertically stacked warehouses where you actually have multiple floors of a warehouse building with complete automation.
Oh, wow.
And so that will reduce the footprint in terms of the total buildings and land they have to take up. We could certainly see some of that, but all in all, industrial is going to be a bigger bellwether than just the economy as a whole. You know, what they're manufacturing and distributing is going to be a reflection of what people are buying and the end consumer. And if the consumers get hurt by this, industrial is going to be collateral damage.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If it gets to a point where people don't want to even, you know, if the cost of gas is too much of an expense for people and they just stay at home and they're ordering stuff off of Amazon, then you got a problem at Target or Walmart, and people aren't going to be going there for food. And if they're ordering everything off of Amazon, Target and Walmart go away. Now your industrial space is left with, you know, so basically we'll have manufacturing space that we're not going to be getting rid of because we need to produce. Right. I don't think that's going to be going away anytime. You got warehouse space, which now could be consolidated into spaces like that. But now you've got all these different types of businesses that just can't run a profit margin based on what they're doing. I mean, I wonder if you could retool all that for residential.
Well, yeah, one of the things you are seeing that. I mean, here in San Diego, we've seen that happen quite a bit down in the Grantville submarket. So everybody knows where the Home Depot is there off the 8 freeway. I think Mission Gorge, some people call it. So in that area, we've seen a lot of industrial be converted to multifamily, and that's continuing. If you drive up and down Mission Gorge right now, you'll see 3 or 4 brand new projects that have been completed over the last few years, and you'll see multiple projects, you know, in a construction phase right now, either being graded or actually going up and being framed.
Wow.
So that's happened a lot there. obviously we all know about the boom that happened in East Village.
Yep.
So, a lot of spaces got taken down there, which it's been a supply side constriction, which helps, fuel demand. And that's been pushing prices up over the years. But we're also seeing places like Amazon and Walmart get smart, and they're using big box spaces that have gone vacant, and using that as warehouse in the back at least. And so there's some of that supply side that's going to, potentially impact the market as well.
Wow. And that goes right, because the other one that's been converted that's being converted are hospitality, right? The hotels.
Yes. Some of the hotels are being converted for other, adaptive reuse purposes. I mean, hotels coming out of COVID, you'd be hard pressed to make a positive case for them.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you talk about that market, since we're discussing it anyways?
Yeah. And so we didn't talk about it really much on the bull case. So to give that just a tiny bit of lip service, San Diego is not the tourism hub that like say Hawaii or something like that. We get a lot of drive-to traffic from LA and Arizona and stuff like that. Everybody talks and hear about zonies coming from Arizona to San Diego, in the summer, and that part won't go away. They were driving anyway, or at least most of them. I think something like low 50% of San Diego's tourism comes within driving distance. So that bodes well for us compared to other hospitals. But I mean, there's a lot of people that are not going on a summer trip, and that still means 50% of the people that were coming to San Diego for tourism were flying. And not a ton of it was international, but still, I mean, I don't know how many people are comfortable getting on an airplane right now. I mean, everybody, You read the Wall Street Journal talking about airlines right now, it's not a good picture.
No, they need to stop doing those diagrams, showing those diagrams on the news where it's like, oh, look how much it spreads on an airplane. Yeah, it's not. Makes me want to stay off of them for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, some of that will start to come back, but that's going to be a slow industry, and I think the airline industry is a real bellwether for for hospitality in general. People travel on those airplanes or who stay in hotels, so that's hard to do. And I think Airbnb is a big market threat for them. It was there before COVID, and will certainly be there after. I don't see that going away.
Yeah, the CEO of Airbnb was on CNBC today, and he was talking about the stays, and people are actually doing longer stays now, which bodes even better now for Airbnbs. Like
Correct,
those longer.
They want the kitchens, they want the house. So hospitality's got a long recovery road ahead of them.
Wow,
it'll probably be pretty bumpy.
Well, the Airbnb, that might help the Airbnb market, I guess, and then I guess you could convert the hospitality into residential.
Yeah, you got to do something. But it's gonna be a long, bumpy road.
Ah, man, that's crazy. Wow.
So I think we covered the major property types on the bear case.
Yeah.
Prop 13 is something all your viewers should really educate themselves on. That's on the ballot this year. And think about the impacts, pro and con for it. It would definitely impact the commercial real estate market significantly. I mean, there's quite a few of those legislative things that I think everybody should be paying more attention to. It's a good reminder to get out there and vote. Talk to your local representatives about what you think is important to you, and its impacts on the economy, because they're considering a lot of things now that could have a big impact on the economy, and I'm not always sure that's front of mind.
Yeah, that kind of wealth reduction really affects a lot of people. Can affect a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this is great. I really appreciate, this whole entire going over everything. I would be amiss not to ask, obviously it seems like we're in a time of arbitrage where there may be some opportunities right now for finding deals in certain market areas or certain market sectors. Do you think what would you recommend to an owner of different types of properties? Is there any one area where you would say, hey, look, you should really think about putting this on the market, doing a 1031 exchange into something else, or someone to buy something?
Yeah, I mean, it's all got to be case by case, because there's so many factors. I mean, when I'm looking at somebody's property, we try to talk about a lot more than just that property, and understand what else, they have in their nest egg. If this is the one property, you're going to have get a different answer from me than if you own 5 or 6, or if you own a business that's in that property, or, if depending on what your exposure is in the stock market, your risk tolerance, what your hold period is. what your estate plan is and who your heirs are and how old you are. These are all different factors of consideration that have to be weighed out. Ultimately, I think whether we go through this bull run, like we talked about in our first episode, or whether it goes through this bear run, I think real estate is still, we mentioned it in the last one, it's the risk adjusted return, right? And I think in this environment, there's a strong case that real estate's an excellent investment. Doesn't mean you can just go into it willy nilly. You got to be strategic and pragmatic about it. But you really need to look at what you have and what your goals are to figure out which direction to go in. Every asset class has pros and cons. And that's why there's, everything is priced different with cap rates, but what goes into those cap rates is different. So the number one thing is make sure you're talking to a qualified advisor to help you, make those decisions.
Yeah.
And make sure that they're presenting you with enough information to be well educated.
Very clever way of not answering, but I appreciate that.
It's different, man. I don't know what else to say.
No, that's cool. I think it's going to be interesting too to see if the Prop 13 goes through or not, because it's almost like a God-given right, Prop 13, to the people. It's trying to take it out of our dead cold hands. That's the only way you're going to get it out.
No, it's
the argument could be made though that, hey, this doesn't apply to anybody besides for properties over 3 to 5 million. This doesn't apply to your average person, but we know how that gets all twisted around.
Like the rent control thing, I'm worried about it being a slippery slope. I think overall we've talked about 3 different bills here today on the legislative side. 4 if you count the stuff in the California Building Code that's continuing to get more and more stringent. There's legislative headwinds, and when you stack that on top of economic headwinds, they tend to have a pretty dramatic effect. And so back to your last question, it's like, well, what other headwinds are you facing inside your portfolio? You really have to look at everything case by case. Multifamily and industrial right now, I think are going to have probably the least immediate concerns, but it doesn't mean they're not going to, get worse. What happens with 1031 exchanges, now that those have kind of dried up, now that delay, that's through July 1st. So, we're only 8 days from seeing most of that stuff close. It's going to be really interesting to see some of these comps begin to hit, because we are very early in this game. I think we're probably second or third inning
right.
of where this is at. And so I don't think we're going to see, have a clear idea where this is going to go until probably third or fourth quarter this year.
That's when I've been kind of planning out the timeline of events for when I think things are going to have problems. And, I definitely see some of the retail sector having more problems come July and August. And I'm thinking the REITs, all of the REITs that are out there and all the funds that are based on commercial real estate, I think come November, December, January, that's going to be the headwinds for those guys.
Yeah, they're going to be state by state. I mean, a bunch of them have leases that extend long beyond the pandemic. So it could be a soft bottom. Like you said, back in 2008, watching the stock market and the real estate market don't align, just like the residential market and the commercial real estate market don't align. Stock market's hitting crazy numbers right now. Everybody's talking about that. And we're essentially at like a year ago levels pre-COVID. It's,
right.
That's kind of a head scratcher. And then on the flip side, you talk about all the stimulus, and are we inflationary? Is this, the lost decade of Japan or worse?
We're only a couple years from having colonies on Mars. Right. So
definitely if Elon gets
that's really going to expand our growth astronomically. That's what everybody's cooking into the stock market. It's colonizing Mars. That's what, that's why the stock market went up so much.
Yeah, very well could be. But, but it's going to be a while. Like I said, in 2009, 2008, it was October when Lehman collapsed, and we didn't see real estate bottom by any metric really until the fourth quarter of 2009, but probably more like first or second quarter of 2010. And that's a full year and a half delay. Yeah. From,
that's a long time.
The event. The Lehman collapse was like, that was it, right? The stock market just cratered, over like a 2-week period. But it took real estate a long settle and find its bottom. If this is the bear market that we've been talking about today, I still think that's going to be the case. It's not going to be tomorrow. People are going to pick up the phone and see that values drop 10%. It's not
no,
like that.
Not like it did at the beginning. That's crazy, because if you go back, the last time we had this much unemployment was the Depression. So if you go back and you look at the stock market back when we had the Depression, and you kind of trace that out, it took over 2 years for us to hit bottom during that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, if you ask them, hey, how long did it take during the Depression for us to go down to the bottom of that market? People think it happened in a couple weeks or a month.
Yeah, weeks or months.
No, it takes a long time for even a stock market to really measure that stuff. And
correct. And because the illiquidity of real estate and the length of transactions, real estate just takes way longer, and it's not as dramatic. It's a softer fall.
Definitely. The only thing that I think could really support values and support prices for real estate, and I don't know how it's all going to play out. It probably won't change the return on the investment, besides the fact you can buy it for cheap now, and then, it's the inflationary pressure on it. It's,
Exactly. We just dumped trillions of dollars into the market.
Yeah, for sure.
That's never been done before. I mean, the United States did more stimulus for COVID than the rest of the world combined.
Yep. And we're going to have to either, the only way the government can pay that money back is by me and you paying taxes. Not just me and you, everybody, all the other 320 million of us. But once all of us pay our taxes, that's how they pay back their debts. That's how they do it. So that means we have to make more money. Someone's got to pay us.
We probably don't want to get into modern monetary theory about whether whether government debt is real. Because there's people out there with the Green New Deal saying that it's not, but I agree with you. And that's a real headwind, but the inflationary pressures are a headwind. And
the inflationary pressures could pull us out of it. The only reason why it could be a downside,
it's stagflation.
If it's stagflation, that's a bad thing. Stagflation, but stagflation is basically where you don't have the income and you just have the inflation, and no one can afford that.
Inflation with no economic growth.
Right. Yeah.
Simultaneously, which has happened historically, not really in the United States, but there's certainly historical incidents of that. But nobody's ever done what we're talking about before. I mean,
true.
Again, like we dumped, from the numbers we were talking about before, at least $3 trillion just on a federal level into the markets, which is the entire annual GDP of many big countries, India, Italy, Great Britain. So
they've dumped money like this into economies before. They did back in 1916, 1917, 1918, 1919 in Germany, right after World War I. Yeah, that's the whole
with the German mark.
Yeah, we were talking about this before. That went crazy, man. So if that happens, I mean, it was like 100. I think it was 14 marks to the dollar when 1914, and then after World War I hit by 1922 or 1923, it was like 1 million marks, I think, per dollar or something like that.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
You think we'll still be the reserve currency if that happens?
Who knows? Who knows? I like real estate stance though. Because I mean, one of the things we talked about with inflation last time was that inflation doesn't hit everything all the time, right? I mean, I made that joke about flat screen TVs.
Right.
The flat screen TV you just bought is a third the price it was 10 years ago, and it's 3 or 4 times
50 times better. Yeah. Dude, 3 or 4 times, like 100,000 times.
Yeah, but and still at pennies on the dollar compared to what it was, but real estate is one of those things that it's an asset class that really drives to protect themselves from inflation. Real estate, gold, assets like that.
Inflation is appreciation, right? Not the same. Yep. So and it's true. Like if your money, I think it's a good thing to think about, and I think it's like a good way to end this, and just I think it's a good point to put out there, and I think that's going to hit. I think this is because ever since they've been saying we were going to have inflation ever since the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's been 20 years and it never hit.
Yeah, never really hit.
Yeah,
not by the metrics they look at least.
No, a gallon of milk is $3.50 today, I think, somewhere around there. And back in 2000, it was $3.50. It's like nothing's changed. Yeah.
Well, I'll send to your viewers if anybody wants me to take a look at their portfolio and discuss it with them. I'm happy to do that. We'll do that free of charge for your listeners. So if anybody wants to take advantage, feel free to reach out.
Cool. Brian, thank you again. Brian's with Commercial Asset Advisors. He's the principal and broker. The contact information is on the screen. If you need to get in touch with him, that's the way to do it. There's the phone number. And thank you for watching the Law Eagles Vodcast. And thank you for being on the show, Brian.
Thanks again.